Hi, I'm Steve Kime, and welcome to Dillingham Gardens. As you can see, I'm at the centerpiece of the garden today, and I will have two special guests join me, George and Louise Milacek. They will join me and they'll take a tour of the gardens. We'll talk about some of the Oklahoma native bushes and grasses and trees. And you're in for a real treat because these two are master gardeners. They know what they're talking about, and it's all right here at Dillingham Gardens. George, thanks for being here today.
Well,
it's good seeing you again.
Nice to see you. It's been about a year.
Yeah, and you haven't changed a bit.
No,
Just
I haven't.
about 12 months older.
I know it.
Same color hair as mine last time. Well, enough of the serious stuff. Let's talk about gardening for just a little bit. Now, you and your wife, Louise, have a title associated with your name called Master Gardener. For us people who just barely mow our yards, what is Master Gardener?
Well, Master Gardeners is a class that is taken at the Extension Center, and it's through Oklahoma State University. And you meet for several months, and you are educated in the different aspects of gardening. And then after you finish this course, then you get certified as a Master Gardener. And once you get certified, then you're expected to contribute 50 hours of community service. It's kind of like being on parole.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
And so
you think I can relate to being on parole? I get that.
I think so. And so Louise and I both took this course, and here we are now trying to educate other people. And you know, I'm kind of the type of guy that if I don't really have an answer, but I'll come up with something.
Very good. Well, I'm going to ask you a few more questions, and I'll give you some time to come up with some great answers. But
Okay.
I really appreciate you joining me today here at the Dillingham Memorial Garden. And we're located at North Government Springs. We have a gorgeous day here in Enid, Oklahoma today. Definitely the sun is out, so forgive me for my sunglasses. But let's talk, George, a little bit about Enid Beautiful Incorporated. It's a nonprofit organization, and their sole mission is, I guess, to take care of various gardens or one garden?
Well, it's this garden
This
right
garden here, okay.
You know, this garden was started in the 1920s when there was a person, an expert in gardening from St. Louis. He came down here and designed this garden, and it was a formal garden. And it was all one area. As you notice now, and when you'll be scanning with Louise, we have pathways and we have brick borders, and so it has changed a lot.
And that's one thing, excuse me, George, that I enjoy about it is the walkways.
Yes.
That you're able to get up close to the different flowers for pictures or whatever, but you're not standing from afar looking at the garden. You're able to walk around through it.
And we have a lot of people from the hospital across the street that come down here, and it really has become kind of a healing garden for people.
Well, it's certainly therapeutic. George, I was looking at my notes.
I'm not through talking to
you. And I think, well, I'll go back to that, but in my notes, it said that this was called Government Springs Park Sunken Garden.
Yes,
so,
and it is still a sunken garden. And I don't know how they came about designing it, because the history, actually, it's very difficult to find history of this garden until we get into the 50s and 60s when Clyde Rowley took over. And he actually lived on the park, and he had his office here. And he had an old retired railroad guy that worked 12 hours a day for him. And what Clyde did when he took over this garden is, in the fall, he would plant it to tulips. After they bloomed, then he would take them up, and then he would put cannas in.
Ooh, sounds like a lot of work to me.
It was. And of course, you didn't have any sidewalks or anything, so he'd just plow them up and then put them in. And so that was probably the heyday of the gardens, and until in 1973, when we had that devastating flood. It actually ruined the whole park, and particularly the gardens. And it kind of laid in ruins for several years until people started thinking in 1993, we've got a centennial. And so it was this group that organized that became known as Friends of Government Springs. And so they started organizing in like 1991. And the Dillingham family, the big problem with this garden was you either had volunteers, and when you have volunteers, they don't show up, they don't know what to do. You've got to have a leader. And it kind of went into disuse. And so this group said, we've got to improve it. Either that or just put it all into grass and forget about it.
I think you're getting to the point to talk about Tom and Elizabeth Dillingham, because in my research, I found this plaque that talked about, it's maintained today by the Dillingham Foundation, but it was in memory of Tom and Elizabeth Dillingham. Tell us how that came about, please.
Well, Tom and Dan Dillingham were sons of Tom and Elizabeth.
Okay.
And so they got concerned about financing it. So they set up this foundation of $50,000. And this foundation is to be used only for the maintenance of this garden.
I see.
And so actually Louise and I are paid employees, and we get paid by this foundation. And so, you know, we're very thankful to the Dillingham Foundation to provide the funds. And they pay our salaries, and they also provide funds because, you know, when you're gardening, you've got to replace plants, and you've got to make some changes, and so we have the finances to do that.
And tell us how Enid Beautiful Incorporated ties into this. You said it's responsible for this garden alone, is that correct?
Well, it was Friends of Government Springs originally, and then when they decided to incorporate as a non-profit, that's when the name was changed to EBI, which is Enid Beautiful Incorporated.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me ask you this. In a few moments, we're going to get your lovely wife, Louise, to take us a kind of a play-by-play of the garden here in just a moment. But let's talk a little bit about planting and pruning, since you're a master gardener. I noticed the other day it was snowing. It was May, but it was snowing in Colorado. Can we rely on the calendar anymore when it comes to maybe pruning or even planting? What's the best, I guess, compass to go by?
Do. Normally, in the fall, you shouldn't do any pruning.
Okay.
But we have a work day where the board members of EBI come in, and we do cleanup to put the garden to bed for the winter. And we do a lot of pruning then.
Okay.
And we haven't had any ill effects from it, because if you remember last winter, we really didn't have a winter.
Right.
We had a couple of ice storms, but we didn't have really cold weather. And so we just do what needs to be done when it needs to be done.
And I guess when you're dealing with gorgeous nature like this, they can handle a cold winter or they can handle a mild winter, right?
Yes. And if plants don't handle extreme weather, then they die, and we know that they don't do well, so we try to come up with something else.
George, one of my closing comments, if people want to learn more about the garden or Enid Beautiful Incorporated, Inc., is there a phone number they can call, or can they write somewhere? Because I'm sure somebody's going to be watching this that may have just moved to Enid and they don't know the history.
Yes.
And you've shared the history of the garden, and they would like to be plugged in somehow. So how could they do that?
They should go to the Extension office, OSU Extension office, which is on Oxford. If I had the phone number in my brain, I would give it to you.
Well, through technology, we'll put that on the screen while you're talking.
Okay, do that, because you can find it. And they can call there if they have any gardening questions. We have people that come in and man the phone.
Okay.
And so, you know, that's why we're there.
But before...
and another thing I want to tell you, Louise and I don't do all of this ourselves, because these master gardeners that need to put in their time, they like to come out here and help us, and they get their community hours that way. And so, you know, we've been blessed.
My closing question, because I'm anxious to take a tour with Louise.
I know, she
look
looks
at some
a
of
lot
the...
better. Look how nice she looks over there.
Well, we'll find out in just a moment. But my last question, you mentioned this across from the hospital. People use this kind of a solace area. It's a quiet, it's therapeutic, if you will. If you haven't been to, you know, the Dillingham Garden before, what else would you characterize this garden to be? You know, it's a therapeutic place for some folks, but if you were to describe it, what would you say?
I would say that it's a unique garden, and it has a oleo mixture OLIO. You know what I mean by that? That, you know, we have roses here, and you and Louise are going to point out some of these things. We have some annuals that we bring in. We have to dig those up then in the fall. And so it is just something that you won't find in most other gardens.
Well, George, it's been a real pleasure seeing you again and talk about something I know that's near and dear to your heart. Thank you to Enid Beautiful Inc. for their efforts in maintaining this beautiful garden. And thanks for being here today.
Oh, yes, Steve, and thank you for
good
inviting
seeing you.
me. Because, you know, I always like to sit in front of camera.
Now, Louise, I recognize these. I've got some of these in my backyard. I think they're peonies, or there's another...
Peonies,
peonies, okay.
Peonies, right.
But they have a special touch, the white flower, but then there's a little red touch in there. Is that common? Why does this one have this little red spot in it?
You know, Steve, there are many different varieties of peonies. Peonies really do well here in the garden. Did you know that they have been in cultivations for centuries in Japan and in China? And a peony plant will live for 100 years.
Wow.
Wow.
Now these are in my backyard, and the non-master gardener that I am, these seem to do well in Oklahoma.
They do.
So if somebody who's moved to Enid, Oklahoma, and they're thinking, well, Louise, what should we plant as a master gardener? You would say, well, consider these, right?
Consider the peony, because even though they don't bloom for a long time, the bush is still pretty because the foliage is nice. It's shiny, and it's a good plant for Oklahoma.
Now, Louise, these look very familiar. I think we just left some white peonies, as I call them. Now, this is a gorgeous color. The ones I have at my home are white, but that looks kind of purple or red to me. Do you know how many variations of colors?
Oh, there are many different varieties of peonies.
You talked quite a bit about the peonies just a few moments ago. I know in my case, ours are on the east side of our home, and they're just now coming out because they don't get a lot of sun. Would you say this is a full sun type plant for people here in Enid? Okay.
And you know, this garden is in full sun. So we have to have all things in here that are like the sun, you know, full coverage.
Well, Louise, there's a lot of bushes in the park, or a garden I should say, but there is this one tree, and you've referred to it a couple times. I think you said it's the Chinese fringe tree. Tell me about the fringe tree.
This tree is really a nice tree to have in the garden, and it's an underutilized tree. It grows well in Oklahoma. It gets about 20 feet tall. It's really, you know, good for a small garden.
So it's halfway there. It's at least 10, 12 feet now.
It is. And it has just finished blooming. You can see the little white blooms that are left. And it has a shiny little foliage on it. It's a sweet little tree. It gets a lot of attention.
And again, this is in full sun. So if you're planting it, you're not worrying about north, south, east, west side of your home. This is a full sun tree.
Yes.
Okay. Well, right in front of us, Louise, we've got, you call that daylilies. And to me, this looks like, as the lack of master gardener that I am, it looks like big, tall, some kind of grass, monkey grass, or whatever they call it.
It does. It kind of has that same
foliage. But you said these are lilies.
These are going to be daylilies, and they're going to come on a little bit later. You know, the thing about a garden is you have some things in their prime, and then they'll fade away, and then something new will come along, and it'll be gorgeous, and then it'll fade away. So you want to have something in the garden continuously pretty and blooming.
And our program today is to highlight the work of Enid Beautiful Inc. And is that where somebody can contact you, Louise, and say, you know, we want certain things blooming throughout the year? Would you have recommendations for people then?
Absolutely. And like George said, it's through the OSU Extension office that they can get that information.
Because I think, you know, when azaleas comes out, that's one thing, but then when roses, that's another.
That's true.
And then I'm familiar with crepe myrtles, tough crepe myrtles in Oklahoma.
And we have a lot of them in this garden.
And we'll find some of those in just a moment. So, okay. So we have a Chinese fringe tree all the way to daylilies.
That's correct.
All right, let's go look at some more favorites. Now, Louise, since we've been here this morning, you have referred to this bush, I guess that's a bush, numerous times.
I guess
as
I like it.
As one of your favorites. Tell us about this.
Well, this is a viburnum. You know, there are over 300 species of viburnums. Maybe you're familiar with the big snowball viburnum, that big shrub. Well, these viburnums, we have a whole series of them here. And what's nice about them is that they attract insects. And
so
the birds love them.
Butterflies?
Yes. And right now you see sort of the ending of the bloom for spring, but in the fall, this is a blue muffin, and they'll get little blue berries on them, and the birds love them.
Okay. And again, this is another full sun
Yes.
plant or bush, if you will.
It is.
So you can plant in your home. Now, on this particular bush, if you will, when do you plant these? Is this something in the fall? Is that the best time?
You know, it's generally thought that fall is the best time to plant.
Really anything? Okay.
But you can get by with spring planting also.
Speaking of butterfly, there was one that just went right by you.
Really?
So
I see some little insects flying around.
there he goes. Okay, well, we need one more trip to make, so let's go down the road here and check out another bush. Well, let's take a look at this.
Okay.
Louise, this is one of my favorite parts of the Dillingham Gardens, if you will. I think it's called Holding the Claim, and Harold Holden did this for the city of Enid. You've got a very tired horse, very tired cowboy, and golly, this is the centerpiece, right?
It is.
For the gardens.
It is, absolutely.
Next to the horse, he's got some grass. Now, is this native grass? And I even noticed some cactus over on the other side. I didn't think cactus was native for Oklahoma.
It is. This is all native. The grasses, the grommas, and also the cactus over there. We put a lot of grasses in the garden because they're just so desirable.
We were talking earlier about the land run and history and Enid, Oklahoma, and that role. Let me ask you this. I think there's a special connection to the land run in your family. Tell us about that,
There
if you
is,
would.
Steve. I think that's why I feel...
That's not one of your horses, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I think it's why I'm so passionate about the garden and the park. Both sides of my family are pioneers. They came from... They made the run. Both sides of the family made the run. The Harrians and the Hasbrooks.
Very good.
So I'm proud of them.
Well, speaking of land run, let's run over here to another part of the garden and show the folks some more beautiful bushes, okay? Let's go. Now, Louise, we're kind of in the northeast corner of Dillingham Gardens this time, and I'm a big fan of crepe myrtles. And those are tough dudes. Even Steve can manicure or grow a crepe myrtle. Now, I understand when the park was kind of rebuilt, if you will, in 92, 93, that some of the original plants are thriving today, and I think that's where we're standing.
There are a few
So we have
of them,
some bushes here that have kind of been here since the replanting, if you will. So what do we have here?
Well, the mock orange has done wonderful. It was an original.
Mock
orange.
Okay.
And some of the crepe myrtles, and some of the rose of Sharon, which is a hibiscus.
Okay. And this large bush back there that looks like great soundproofing, you know, if you needed to soundproof yourself from the neighbors or whatever. And that is called what again?
Those are nice shrubs. They're called beauty bush.
Beauty bush.
Beauty bush, and
Very
they're just
appropriate.
about finished, but they are really a nice spring shrub. And then the mock orange is nice also. It puts out a very nice fragrance. And like you say, you know about the crepe myrtle.
Yeah.
You can't beat them. They're the queen of
And they
the
love
summer.
this Oklahoma heat. They just
do.
thrive in that, and they're just
They
really
do.
gorgeous. Louise, thank you for your time today. You are a wealth of information.
Thank you.
And I've learned a great deal about Dillingham Gardens, but also what makes up the beautiful place that it is.
Oh, I've enjoyed it.
So,
And we invite people to come and enjoy the garden.
well, thank you for your time today, and let's go look at one more thing.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, Louise, now there's something that I'm familiar with, and those are cannas.
That's
I
right.
know about cannas, and that's another tough that Steve can handle or plant and take care of. I love the reds and the yellows and the mixed colors, but cannas are just gorgeous. Okay, now this is a beautiful, is this considered a bush, plant? What's our technical word for this?
This is a perennial. And
Perennial.
a perennial means it comes back year
Right.
after year,
It's-
and it gets larger as it comes back.
And it's got to be tough
fuller.
if it lives in Oklahoma.
It's a
Come back.
good plant. It's a good plant for Oklahomans to have. It's yarrow. And I like it because of the color. It's kind of a sagey green, and it's different from the other greens in the garden.
You have the sage green that you're pointing to, but also on the edges you have this bright yellow. Is that the norm? I mean, is it in a spring mode right now?
They're
or?
just opening. See,
Okay.
this is the beginning, and then
Okay.
the little flowers open
So it's
up.
working its way towards the yellow color.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Very, very pretty.
Oh.
Okay, as you can tell, red is one of my favorite colors, and my wife is always talking about knockout roses. Is this where we're at?
Knockout roses are wonderful for Oklahoma. We have them all through the garden. They're just so durable, and they are reliable. Now these roses got really big. Knockouts sometimes will get 6 feet tall, and so we came in here and really pruned them hard.
And when did
last
you
year.
do that?
We did that late fall.
Okay, in the fall you did the pruning like
And
George
they
was saying
have,
earlier.
I mean, they have just, look at them, they're gorgeous.
I just love the red. And as you said, they're throughout the garden. And it's great color if you're trying to do this at home, spread things out.
It is.
A great color.
It is. And the mulches really help too. You can't say anything more about mulch. It just keeps the weeds down, the moisture in. That really helps. And the city helps us with that.
So there you go, knockout roses, Dillingham Gardens. I hope you enjoyed our program today. It's been a real pleasure for me to visit with George and Louise Milacek. They are very knowledgeable, and Enid Beautiful Inc. does a great job in maintaining Dillingham Gardens. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time. Until then, make it a great day.